Welcome to Lived In, a podcast series by Hemby Home Co. Lived In is all about interior styling for the ordinary home. If you live in an ordinary house on an average street and you love design, this podcast is for you. Many of us long to infuse the places in which we dwell with both style and livability. But we also have to stick to realistic budgets. What does it look like to live in a space that transitions with you as life does? How do you build equity while creating a space that truly feels like home? And what can you do to make a space yours when it doesn't belong to you? Join me, Hemby Co, a realtor, content manager, and interior advisor, and let's find out. Hi guys, this is an odd one for me because I am recording first thing in the morning, super early, because if I don't, there will be no episode. Anyway, I hope that you guys are all doing well, and I hope that all of your plants are thriving. Just an update on mine. All of my hydrangeas are basically dead. Can't do hydrangeas, but my green plants, thriving. So anyway, I hope all of your plants are doing much better than mine. Anyway, let's get into this episode. The do's and don'ts of making a rental feel like home. Right off the bat, I can tell you, no hesitation, that my personal opinion is that you should invest as little as possible in things that you cannot take with you somewhere else or resell for very close to the purchase price. With rentals, I've seen a number of successful content creators invest significant amounts of money into the properties that they're renting out. And there are some cases where these individuals are having the landlord split the cost or maybe even cover things entirely. And in that case, go for it. But there are also a number of cases where these individuals are footing the bill or they are sponsored. Don't copy them. My advice would be don't put your money in if you cannot get it back or take the item with you. So we've started there. Let's talk very briefly about what you shouldn't do, the don'ts of rental, decor and furnishing, if you will, which actually that feels a bit strong. So maybe the things I would say you should try to avoid. No hard and fast rules here. Some of these are going to be pretty obvious based on the earlier statement I made about things you can take with you or resell, but I'm going to include them nonetheless. Number 1, don't paint or move anything structural without permission from your landlord. This feels obvious, but it might not be that obvious to some of you. Don't paint the walls without asking the landlord if he or she is okay with it. Just, go ahead and make sure that that's okay before putting in all that effort, especially if you're going to end up having to paint over it. Obviously, don't take any walls down. Don't try and do anything with the chimney, anything like that. Check everything with your landlord ahead of time. Number 2, don't change anything structural that is permanent or costly. AKA, don't take down the walls or raise the ceilings or move the doorways. I think there are maybe semi-permanent things that you could do with the structure. I really tried to think of them for this episode and I couldn't really wrap my head around what those might be. So unless they're kind of not real walls or you're using bookshelves as room dividers, go ahead and move that stuff, but don't change anything else that's permanent or costly, especially if you're footing the bill, unless you have permission from your landlord. Number 3, don't commission anything that is custom fitted to the space that you're in. So, I should explain, this doesn't mean you can't buy something that is the perfect shape for the awkward nook or the awkward corner, but don't have curtains cut and measured for that awkward nook, because they won't fit where you move next and you won't be able to sell them to anyone because of the funky sizing. Last one, number 4. Don't do built-ins. You cannot take them with you. Sounds really obvious, but anything honestly that you are attaching to a wall, especially if you're doing so without having obtained permission, and you think you're attaching to a wall or fitting into a wall is designed really to stay, not to move, don't do built-ins. You cannot take them with you. All right, we'll talk about what you can do after my thing of the week. My thing of the week this week is little luxuries. So let's start with a question. Are you a bar soap, gel soap, or foam soap type of person? And I'm talking strictly about hand soaps, not washing your body. It's a different thing. This sounds silly, but I think, we all have to wash our hands fairly often, a number of times a day. So why not make it a pleasant experience? I think bar soap feels the most luxurious, and I really like using ones with really great natural scents and then putting them in pretty soap dishes. It's just a small way to add a little extra joy to your day. So I will include some links to some lovely soaps of all kinds, bar, gel, foam, along with some of my favourite soap dishes. So check those out in the show notes. All right, let's get back to the episode. So what can you do? What should you do? Number one, do invest in quality furniture pieces. I'm not against IKEA. I actually love IKEA. Big fan, huge. However, and that's actually acknowledging that is not the most popular opinion in the design world. But, even with my love of IKEA, I think it's important to be selective. Solid wood items and things made by a carpenter or a craftsman are generally going to last the test of time. They are generally going to be fairly easy to work with to get them to fit in various rooms and styles of house and styles of room. And you'll be able to move them around and assemble and dismantle them without the fear that they will fall apart after a single use. So do invest in quality furniture pieces. That's number one. Number two, do use textiles to your advantage. Drape tablecloths over tables that don't fit the colour scheme. Use cushions to bring funky colours together. Use curtains to divide and designate awkward spaces and to add privacy where there are no walls. Huge fan of curtains when there are no walls. They also help with sound. Use rugs, also speaking of sound, to hide ugly or well-worn floors. You don't have to put peel and stick down on a floor that's ugly. You can just put a giant rug on top. And we'll talk about that later. Number three, do change your lighting. This sounds like a costly project, but you can take lights with you if you're willing to put in the work to install and obviously remove them when it's time to move out. And light fixtures make a huge difference. They're kind of like the shoes or the jacket of an outfit, with the wonderful capacity to pull the whole look together or make it fall apart. I will say, if replacing overhead light fixtures is too intimidating for you, just opt for more task-focused table lamp lighting or other lighting that can be plugged in, like floor lamps or plug-in pendant lighting. Number four, I believe. Yes, number four. Do invest in artwork and mirrors. You can hang art, even if it is just with a command strip. I don't know what the equivalent of that is in England. We don't call things by their brand name. But you can hang art even if it's just with a command strip. If you don't know what a command strip is, Google it. Don't be afraid to try. Just keep it simple. If you're not painting the walls, then adding large-scale art can be a really great way to adjust the focus from the colour that you hate on the walls and move it from there to the artwork that you love. In darker spaces with less natural light, you can use carefully placed mirrors or even mirrored furniture. Be selective in what you use, please. I have strong opinions. But you can use even mirrored furniture to capitalize on the light, the natural light that you do have in those darker spaces. Next one, Number 5, do get cute multi-purpose storage. If you are in a place with very little storage, you will need to create space where it is lacking. And, some landlords are okay with nails and bolts in walls and others are not. Check with them before you put holes in the wall. And remember that if you are using a tall bookshelf, it will probably need to be anchored to the wall for safety, especially if you have children. They don't understand / have no fear. They will climb bookshelves. If you can't make any holes in the walls because the landlord said no, then opt for long, narrow, low furniture, which takes up minimal floor space, or at least uses dead floor space, if any. I love the idea of a long, narrow bench in a hallway that books can be stacked under, but can also be a place to put shoes on in the morning, or drop your keys, or drape a visitor's coat. I love that. Cute multi-purpose storage. You'll have to think outside of the box. And I will, maybe at some point, I'll do a blog post on cute storage, because there's so much that we don't necessarily think about. But yes, get cute storage that can work in a number of different places. Swiss Army knife storage, if you will. Number 6, should have numbered these. Do bring your plants. While I think it's true that you can take plants too far and go a little bit too jungle indoors, I also think it's really nice to add a tall tree in an empty corner or an ugly corner to line a deteriorating windowsill with small, colourful plants and distract from an ugly countertop with something pretty and useful, like a lavender or rosemary plant. Bring your plants. They just immediately add a level of warmth, and also the whole carbon dioxide oxygen thing is good for the air that you breathe. So bring plants. Number 6, do make it personal. This is number 7, guys. I really cannot count. Goodness gracious. Anyway, do make it personal. At the end of it all, I really think that your space should reflect you and feel like home in whatever way it genuinely can. Display your stuff. Display your books and photos, your records, your random travel tchotchkes, your favorite mugs and plates. Let your stuff, however arbitrary you might deem it to be the decor. This is something I actually saw quite a bit of when I lived in Sweden. I think it's just because the houses, the apartments were so much smaller that a lot more things just had to be on display than would ordinarily be, maybe in the US where everything's kind of shoved behind a door. But the Swedes are really good at just letting their stuff be pretty and functional, one, but also just be and exist out in the open and be something cool to look at. So think about that. Another thing on this subject of letting your stuff, such a horrible word, but letting your stuff be decor, something I'm working on in our house is slowly filling our whole mantelpiece above our fireplace with our books. I really love that in our house, almost everything has some sort of story to it. And that's not because we've arbitrarily worked towards that, but because it's really nice when people come into our house and they say, oh, that's really cool. Where did you get that from? And I'm able to say, oh, we got that on a trip to blah, blah, blah. Or, oh, I saw that book on your shelf. Why do you have that book? And I can say, oh, well, that's my favorite book. I fell in love with that book when I was living here, or whatever it is. Your home should reflect you. And I think that helps it feel more like home. I know confidently that it makes your rental feel more like home, even if it's not the home that you own. So those are all my do's. To recap, do invest in quality furniture pieces. Do use textiles to your advantage. Do change your lighting. Do invest in artwork and mirrors. Do get cute multi-purpose storage. Do bring your plants, and do make it personal. And again, that was 7 points, not 6. At some point I messed up. You'll listen back and you'll hear it. Okay, before I end this segment, I do have 2 bonus points that are, gosh, let's call them maybe do's. Not don'ts, not do's, maybe do's. The first one I feel like I have to talk about is removable wallpaper or decals and contact paper and peel and stick flooring. The truth is I really don't like contact paper, but also I've never actually seen it installed really well, so maybe that's why. And, you can try decals and peel and stick for the look, but again, I don't love it. I don't like the feel. I don't like things that look like one thing and feel like something else. So that's my personal opinion. But if you are going to do these, there may be do's after all, be wary of these. Make sure that you get really good quality so they stick well, but also come off well without damaging surfaces. And make sure that your install is absolutely flawless. You can't avoid mess ups and bumps and lines. It's going to ruin the whole effect. The second thing is, or the second maybe do, is that you could replace cabinet hardware and faucets, that kind of thing, taps. In theory, you can take these with you or resell them, but not always. So just go into it knowing that that may be the case. All right, guys, that's it for this week's episode. I hope that this was helpful and that you've come away with some idea of what you can do to update your rental spaces and make them feel more like home. I will be back with one more episode for June, and then in July we'll have a whole month off while we prepare for what I cannot believe is going to be season 3 of the podcast. Thank you for staying with me. I'm working on some really fun interviews, so I'm hoping that these will be in season 3 to add some value to you and give you more exposure to experts who really know their area of expertise and can tell you things that you wouldn't otherwise know. It's going to be fun. Okay, well, it's been real. As they say, I'll see you in 2 weeks.